I'd tried and failed numerous times to start my own company.
Tell us a little bit about your journey.
I was 30 that I pivoted, not once, but twice. But Skimlinks became a very, very successful company and is still going very strong today, even after being doubly acquired, where you work in the presence of someone else. Because when you do that, your brain is programmed to mimic the behaviors that it observes. It's called social mimicry, and it's how, as humans, we learn empathy, and it's why we sneeze when we see other people sneeze. It's a really core part of our biology.
There's lots of different types of people on there, but are there any trends that you're seeing in terms of the people deciding to come online and be part of that community?
I really expected the platform to be used predominantly by other entrepreneurs. That's what I knew. And to my surprise, the majority of people using the platform were people with ADHD.
Welcome, everybody. This is The Change Show with Simon Phillips and my very special guest today, Alicia Navarro. Alicia is the founder and CEO of Flown and a serial entrepreneur with a computer science background. She previously led Skimlinks for 11 years, growing it into a major success before it was acquired during the COVID lockdown. Since then, Alicia has become fascinated by the real-world conditions that help humans do their best work, mentally, physically, and collectively. And that curiosity is what led her to build Flown, which I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more about today. I mean, when I spoke to Alicia in the preparation for all of this, I was absolutely blown away by the impact that this system is having. So I'm sure you're going to thoroughly enjoy this episode. Alicia, welcome.
Thank you very much, Simon. Really happy to be here.
It's great to spend some time with you. I understand you've just flown all the way back from Australia just to be here.
Exactly. Just for you, Simon. Yes.
Oh, perfect.
A long way to come, but worth it.
Absolutely. So, Alicia, for the people listening or the people watching, tell us a little bit about your journey. Obviously, I've sort of done the main sort of corporate elements there, but tell us a little bit about your journey and what were the high points, if you like, from that would lead you to feel a little bit like a change maker in what you're doing.
So, very quickly, I guess, my background has always been in tech. As you say, I studied computer science and was the first woman to top a computing science degree at my university in Australia. And I've always been interested in entrepreneurship, and I'd tried and failed numerous times to start my own company. And it wasn't really until I was 30 and I started my last company, which came about almost accidentally. Skimlinks is an affiliate marketing automation platform, but that's certainly not what I intended to start when I began it. It started as a sort of Pinterest type platform, which allowed you to share products that you were considering for a decision. And it was through the failure of that I pivoted, not once, but twice, and accidentally sort of invented this new way of monetizing content on one's website, which we then decided to commercialize as its own standalone technology and offer to other websites and media companies so that they could monetize their content. So that became how Skimlinks came about. And suddenly I'm thrust into leading an affiliate marketing platform, which was not an area that I necessarily knew anything about when I started. But Skimlinks became a very, very successful company and is still going very strong today, even after being doubly acquired, and it's still being used by most major publishers around the world. So in many ways, that was a change because what began as a simple way of automating an existing form of monetization, which is what affiliate marketing is, became actually a really fundamental and strategic monetization and growth strategy for media companies, because not only were they using Skimlinks in order to generate incremental revenues beyond traditional advertising revenues, but the kind of content that they needed to create in order to make the most of Skimlinks, so product reviews, gift guides, etc., became a way of attracting SEO traffic because it created a lot of long tail, very unique content that ranked very highly in search engines. So publishers found that creating the kind of content that would make money from Skimlinks became a way that they actually got a lot of new organic traffic to their site that they could monetize also through other ways. And so, it became a really fundamental part of the both monetization and growth strategies for the entire global publishing industry, which is not what I intended when I first started it out, but became the reality of the change that we made. So I was really proud of that.
How many people did you have there by the time you finished, or your term?
What was that? Sorry.
How many people did you have in your team by the time you sold?
At its biggest, we were about 80 people. We were headquartered in London, but we had an office out in San Francisco, and then we moved our US headquarters to New York, where most of our publishing clients were, like companies like BuzzFeed and New York Times and Hearst, etc. All the big media companies would use us. And I think the other big, thing that I'm really proud that I did, and I guess is also a change that was made in the world, was that I was one of the early leaders that promoted the importance of creating a strong team culture. I think, now it's all the rage, but back when I started, it was not really something that was talked about a lot, or if it was often said in a really condescending sort of flippant way, or it was assumed that just putting a ping pong table, in the corner of an office was a culture thing done. And, Skimlinks and my team were, one of the first to really recognize that culture was about creating not only a set of values and behaviors and norms that determined how the team would operate even when they weren't being observed, but really doing very conscious things that would embed it into the way that we worked, the way that we hired, the way that we rewarded people, the way that we punished. Like, it became the basis for almost everything that we did in the company. And that is what enabled, I think, Skimlinks to do so well. We managed to attract a lot of great people. We managed to retain people. Just to give you a sense, like my number one and number 3 employee at Skimlinks stayed for 17 years.
Wow.
So we were very good at hiring, and a lot of people that I hired are still there and may even eclipse that. So, we were very good at creating a culture that attracted people that wanted to stay, because it was such an enjoyable and a place where you could develop yourself as well. So, they were the big things that I did in those years. And then, we got acquired. And I had a nice couple of years as a sabbatical, and then I decided to do it all again with Flown.
So before we go on to Flown, thinking about the cultural aspect that you're talking about there, we do a lot of work with organizations that wonder if it's worth the effort. I think they maybe put some time into think about there's our vision and values. And then you see the posters up on the walls, don't you? These are our values, and people are actually sitting around thinking, well, one, I don't even know what the values are. And two, I can't remember the last time anybody even discussed them, or I felt that those values existed. So give us a couple of clues as just some of the things that you did that brought that to life.
So in both Skimlinks and now in Flown, I think the first thing is that you can't just come up with words and say this is what the culture is. Be really specific about what it is, about the values and the behaviors that you want to optimize for, and give them sort of a unique or compelling way of describing them. So you can't just say integrity, innovation. You've got to kind of come up with a way of talking about them in ways that feel more unique and specific to your company. The second thing is then you need to make it easy to remember. And so, because you're right, unless there's something that is easily remembered and then easily referred to throughout the day-to-day of your company, they're not really your values. Skimlinks, we did this through a mnemonic device. So we took Skimlinks, we took, our culture had a name, we called it #SkimLove, and it came about very organically. We would preface everything with Skim. So, it wasn't football that the team were playing at lunch, it was Skimball. We didn't hire interns, we hired Skimterns. And then the way it became a very natural way of describing the way that we won business was SkimLove, because we would make, I just hired people that were really warm, relationship building kind of people. And so we would win business because customers love doing business with us. So we called that SkimLove. And so then we took each letters of SkimLove and came up with a word that related to each of those that was a complete reflection of what we hired for. So I'm not even sure I'm going to remember all of them, but because it's been so many years now. But I know that K was kick-ass, I was inventive, M was master of your domain, L was likable, O was open-minded, V was vocal, and E was entrepreneurial. I forget.
Wow.
S was sparkle. There you go.
Yay.
So then we did like drawings for each of those that then became the emblems for each of those words. And then we plotted them around the office, and then we, your performance reviews were based on that. The way that we hired was based on that. So it was really deeply entrenched throughout the entire organization. All of our rituals, our meetings referred to that. And so when I was starting Flown, I actually started with the culture. So I worked out what do I want the culture to be like this time? How is it going to be different? And how will that help me judge who I hire? And so I came up with the 5 values. And again, I got an illustrator in and I did drawings for each of those. And then that became how I set off and hired. And there were very specific things like, we appreciate effort, but we celebrate outcomes is one of them. And professional with a touch of sparkle is another. Sparkle features a lot. And so we then, create rituals that are based off them. So we have, a celebrate outcomes session and Slack channel. And one of our other values was we say it straight and we take it well, and which basically means that you especially with a remote team, it was important that we optimize for people that could speak directly and weren't easily offended. And so now whenever we give tough feedback, we preface it with, I'm going to say it straight and I hope you take it well. And then we say it. So everyone in the company knows the values because we say them all the time and they're embedded into every aspect of the business. So I would really recommend that companies do that because, again, it has meant that my team have stayed with the company for many years, and it makes it easier to hire people because we really seek to hire people that satisfy and meet each of those 5 criteria.
Yeah, I like your we say it straight and I hope you take it well. We've come up with a LACE model, with, again, an acronym, but it's that relationship between empathy and accountability. That's what makes it work, and that's what makes it effective in a work environment. We can, it's great to look after our people and have empathy and all of that great stuff. But if we don't actually hold ourselves accountable, we don't get the work. Then there won't be an organization here.
That is very similar to we appreciate effort, but we celebrate outcomes. So what that one means is, I know that you've worked really hard on something and I really appreciate that, but it's the outcome that we want to that we celebrate. So, you've made, 10 sales calls. I appreciate that, but we're going to celebrate when it converts. And that creates a more outcome oriented culture, which again, because we're a remote first team, was important that we optimize for results rather than effort.
Yeah, love it. So that's a lovely bridge between Skimlinks and Flown. So tell us a little bit more about Flown then. Where did that idea come from?
So after I stepped down from Skimlinks before it was acquired, and I got my chief revenue officer to take over as CEO. And I did that because we had gotten to the stage where after 11 years of running the business, we were in a good place. But at that stage, we needed a CEO that was really great at like EBITDA maximization. And while I could do it, it was not my strength. I love being an early stage founder. That's where my strengths lie. So I convinced the board it was time for me to step down. I convinced the chief revenue officer to take over. And then I handed things over and I stepped down from day-to-day involvement in the organization. I stayed on the board until we got acquired 2 years later. So I had this 2-year sabbatical during which I really wanted to play with a lot of ideas to see what would arise as being the thing that I wanted to be my next mission. I knew that I wanted to do something that had a real social mission behind it. I really wanted, now that I had learned so much about running and building and scaling a business, can I implement that to do something purposeful and mission driven that could, change the world? Yeah. And after playing with a lot of different ideas, I became really interested in the concept of focus and flow, particularly after reading the book Deep Work by Cal Newport. If you haven't read it, I thoroughly recommend it because it really highlighted to me how important it was that we all get a chance to work in a deep work way, which basically means when you work in a state of focus, concentration on something significant, in that state that we do our best work, and that we feel the best at the end of a workday. But all too often, the way that we work tends to be shallow work, which can fill your days, but doesn't really move the needle very much, nor make you feel good necessarily. So I became really fascinated with these concepts of deep work and focus, especially as it was becoming clear that social media and just generally the world that we live in was getting so good at distracting us, and that was going to have significant social and economic impact on the world. And so I knew that I wanted to do something in that space and find a way to scale the delivery of focus and flow to people around the world. So I started to study that, and particularly study like work rituals and workplace rituals, and how we can bring more meaningful and impactful ways of working that can make us more focused, more productive, and more happy. And so I used a lot of that science to basically create the core concept of Flown, which is a platform that runs focus sessions that leverages the technique called body doubling. So for those who know, body doubling is basically where you work in the presence of someone else, because when you do that, your brain is programmed to mimic the behaviors that it observes. It's called social mimicry, and it's how, as humans, we learn empathy, and it's why we sneeze when we see other people sneeze. It's a really core part of our biology. But even beyond that, and I think everyone has probably experienced this, when you go to the library and you're around other people focusing, it's easier for you to focus. You feel compelled to behave in the ways of people around you. It's why we perhaps go to the gym to work out rather than work out at home, because we feel more accountable. Feel this, you've booked it, you've paid for it. That means you want to turn up and not let yourself or others down. So we basically leveraged all these, social behavioral triggers and hooks to create these focus sessions, which is basically where you turn up and you have the camera on, similar to what we're doing here now. And I work and you work while we're both on camera, but because I see you focusing and working, it makes it easier for me to do so. And it means it's an hour or 2 hour long session that I've said to myself and to others that I'm going to be working on this task. Yeah. It sounds like a really simple thing, but it's incredibly effective at getting people to show up, get started, and stay on a task. And it's particularly effective for people with ADHD, or perhaps that are lonely, working from home, and want just a little bit of human company throughout their day.
And I was blown away, because I've spent plenty of time online in Zoom meetings and Teams meetings, and so I was looking at the platform with you when we were chatting in preparation for this, and I was just waiting so where's the breakout room? Where's the opportunity for people to go and have a chat? And that absolutely is not the point of it. The point of it is, as you say, it's that body doubling. It's that opportunity to see other people doing, and just getting into the focused space of working, but not feeling alone.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly, so Flown as a platform supports different types of focus sessions. So some of them are just silent the whole way through, but there are some formats that do have breakout rooms where you share what your goal is for the hour, and then at the end of the hour, or 2 hours, you share how much of that you got done.
Okay.
And so there are formats that allow for more conversation. And also there's a lot of sessions that are run by the community. So we also enable peer-to-peer sessions where they can be more specific about what goes on in the session. So you've got people that use it for decluttering their desk, or for doing meal prep, or for musical instrument practice. Anything that is a task or a project that you want to work on and you want to feel extra accountable for, people can do on Flown.
So how many countries are now involved?
I mean, we've got users from all over the world. Over 100 countries are represented in our user base. We predominantly support everything from the UK, Europe, all the way through to the Americas, because we run some of the focus sessions are led by our trained facilitators. So those facilitators will run sessions from, I think, 7 a.m. UK time all the way through to like 10 p.m. Pacific.
So you've focused in on with Flown that notion, if you like, of a deep work culture. But how do you build that? If you've got a typical office let's say, how if I'm running a team or running a division in a business, what could I tap into that you've discovered, if you like, about deep work without it becoming sort of rigid or joyless?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so at the moment, Flown predominantly supports people that are working remotely, because you're on I mean, it's not exclusively, but you are on a live video call, essentially.
Yeah.
So it supports people that are working remotely at least some of the time. That being said, for an organization that may bring people into the office, or even if they don't, one of the things that we really encourage companies to do is think about how they can create more of a deep work culture, because that's the kind of organization that is going to be able to do the most impactful work as quickly as possible. And so there's lots of ways to do that. The most common is to have a day or a section of a day that is no meetings, but the important thing for any culture is not what leaders say it is. It's what they are seen to do by others. So you can't say that we have a deep work culture that has no meetings on a Wednesday morning, and then you yourself are messaging someone on Slack on a Wednesday morning. You have to be seen to be leading on the values that you say your culture are. So we have a Deep Work Friday. So people we optimize to do all of our work during the week, and then Fridays not for meetings. And then there's other things that we do, for instance, as a culture. So we have a little indicator, a little icon that we put on Slack if we're working in a deep work mode. So we use a little butterfly. And so if you see that status on anyone's Slack, you don't message them, you honor that. And again, as a leader, I lead by making sure I don't do that. And so that enables others in the company to feel that they can say no to someone if they try to contact them during one of their deep work modes. So they're just like a couple of really simple things that companies can do, even if they are working in an office, that can bring more deep work into their organization.
Yeah, love it. So I was in a discussion earlier on about one of the leaders' responsibilities, if you like, is helping people deal with uncertainty. And I wondered if you had any insights from your time of leading a business through COVID. Did you, there couldn't have been any more heightened uncertainty than during that period. Were there any insights that you gathered at that time that you still deploy today?
So we started Flown during COVID. So we, from day one, were optimized towards that way of working. And so, as I said, because I had started in the company, the first thing I did was design the culture, which I knew this time was going to be remote first. So we were fine during COVID. However, what it really showed me is how especially as I've seen other companies revert to going back to in office because they say it's better. And I think the truth is that it is better if that is the type of leadership that you are best at running. It's really, you cannot run a remote first company using the values and culture that worked for an in-office culture. It works for us. And I know plenty of companies that very successfully work remotely because they are optimized from a cultural perspective and from a leadership perspective to flourish in that form of environment. And so to make that work, for example, we really put a big emphasis on some of our social rituals, which again sound perhaps like they're meaningless, but it's really important for us because we don't work together every day to make sure that we have these connection times throughout the week. So we start the week together, we end the week together, we play games together, we make sure that we meet in person every quarter. We really lean into these kind of cultural rituals that we've embedded throughout the organization. And so we work very well as a remote team. And what that has enabled us to do is optimize for hiring people outside of metropolitan areas or even out of the country itself. It enables our team to work, in other countries while they're taking care of their parents or grandparents or kids. And so it has enabled us to support a type of flexibility that we would not be able to do if we were an in-office culture.
You're really tuning in, aren't you, into the human potential of it all? Because you're saying how can we enable people to thrive, and recognizing what people are willing to give in reciprocation for that.
It's true, because we did the opposite at Skimlinks, my last company, which was very much an in-office culture. And, we optimized for that. We hired for that. It was a company that really celebrated camaraderie. And so we hired people that wanted to come in and be social and play football together and do game nights together, because I knew that was the cultural values that we lent into.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of pressure at the time to bend the rules to allow people to join that worked remotely. And I said no, because it would have broken our culture. And so that's what, that's why I think hybrid organizations struggle the most, because they have a bit of everything, and it's very hard to run a hybrid culture that works for all employees equally.
Exactly, because you've got some people in a hybrid culture that are loving the isolation, and you've got some that are loving the camaraderie, as you say. But that's a dispersed culture. That's not one culture. That's multiple cultures.
Exactly, and so that is hard. I think that it's why I think a lot of companies have either tried to bring everyone back, or tried to optimize for a remote first culture, but just allowed people to work in an office if they wish. But it is harder. And I think what it all boils down to is remote can work very well, but it's not easier. You have to work very, very hard to make the company still create the kinds of connections, like social connections, that make a difference, and create a space for spontaneity and creativity, which is often much harder to do remotely as well. So you have to just do things a lot more consciously and a lot more intentfully in order to make it work as effectively as if you were all in the same office together.
You said earlier that you pivoted twice with Skimlinks in the future, so found yourself feeling quite surprised at where you ended up. What surprises have emerged at Flown?
Well, we did the same thing at Flown. So when I started Flown, it was very different. It was an Airbnb for deep work spaces. Much more of a place to find a space
local spaces
to go to physically to work from for a few days. And so, we that's what we launched with. And I sort of last minute decided, I started Flown because I wanted to make an impact in the world. And to do that, we needed to be accessible. And so a platform that only, provided spaces, for rich people to go to some of the time was never going to be as accessible as I wanted it to. So we also launched these focus sessions that people could join even if they weren't going away physically. And so we divided it into Flown here and Flown away.
Okay.
And so we launched with both. And what I noticed is that A, it was way too complex. And B, more people were interested in these virtual focus sessions that we were running. And given that it was also COVID and there was some limitations to people being able to go away, and there was also a lot of uncertainty around accommodation availability, that I made the very difficult decision in our first 6 months of launch to actually pause and cut away the physical spaces side of the business and double down on the virtual spaces side of the business, which I felt had the most potential to scale.
Wow. So if you look at your Flown community today, there's lots of different types of people on there, but are there any trends that you're seeing in terms of the people deciding to come online and be part of that community?
The thing that really surprised me initially, as I said, when I first started Flown, it was really about helping, self-actualization. How can I help people achieve flow states? And I really expected the platform to be used predominantly by other entrepreneurs. That's what I knew. And to my surprise, the majority of people using the platform were people with ADHD. And it's because they said, you're using a technique called body doubling that is, very popular within the ADHD community. At the time, I didn't even know what body doubling was. We were doing these focus sessions that happened to be body doubling, but it's not what I had done deliberately in the first place. And so as I was, intrigued by this, the fact that to my surprise, the majority of our users were people that I had not expected. And so the more I learned about it, the more I realized that we were tapping into something much deeper and, much more important in many ways, because there were so many people either struggling quietly with ADHD or hadn't yet been diagnosed, or, had it but had never really, didn't want to just rely on the drugs, and found incredible life-changing benefits from using the platform, to the point where, you go to our Trustpilot page and the most common phrase used to describe Flown is it's game changing, which really took me by surprise, because it's nice to have, my last business was a monetization platform for publishers. People liked it a lot, but certainly they did not, weep when they talk about it. But now at Flown, people do, we really are game changing for a lot of people, because for the first time they feel I'm able to get things done. I'm able to feel good about myself and about what I do with my days. And that kind of impact I had not anticipated at all, but we learned into it. And so we continue to be a platform that is predominantly used by people with ADHD or similar neurodivergences. And it's also used predominantly by freelancers or, people working solo that like having a sense of community around them. So you start with an idea about what your business is, and it ends up being something different to totally different people.
Yeah, totally. And are people making connections online as well? Is it starting to become a little bit of a network as well as
very much so, because people meet on some of the focus sessions, but once you the way the platform works is once you've attended 30 sessions yourself, you unlock the ability to host your own sessions.
Right.
And so a lot of our members will start to host their own sessions, both because it makes them feel extra accountable. If you host a session, you have to show up because people are relying on you. So it's a really great way to make yourself extra accountable, but also because they get to run sessions with their new friends, and they get to create, variant formats, which perhaps allow for more, chatting and social time. So there's a lot of really, good friendships that have formed on Flown, which is exactly what we wanted. Yeah,
brilliant. So what's next? What's your vision for Flown over the next few years?
I think that what we are seeing is that the concept of body doubling is starting to hit the mainstream, partly driven by the fact that just more and more people are struggling with focus related issues, and in the search for ways to make their work life more bearable, they're encountering the concept, they search for it, and they find Flown. And so we're really wanting to ride that wave and make Flown into a platform that the widest range of people find meaningful benefit from. We did a survey and study recently, and it showed that on average users experience 123% uplift in their output when they work on a focus session compared to when they don't. So we know that we are massively impactful in terms of productivity and output. We then ran another study, and it shows that we have a benefit, like we ease anxiety and improve well-being to a comparable level to CBT therapy, which is huge. So, our goal is just to get out into the world and be as mainstream and therefore impactful as possible. The hardest thing about Flown is that people don't know that they need us, and it can feel like a very weird concept at first. So there's been a long sort of education process. And so my goal now is that, we've hopefully educated enough people, and we build a platform that more and more people talk about and come to use on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, I love that. I can imagine the leaders of maybe formerly traditional organizations starting to think, well, that may be somewhere we can put our staff as well.
Well, it should be offered by major organizations as a workplace adjustment. Organizations need to offer, reasonable adjustments to their staff to support either their physical or mental disabilities. And in many cases, Flown is provided as a reasonable adjustment to the neurodiverse staff.
Yeah.
But what we find is that, it's not just people with ADHD that use Flown. And so by supporting your neurodiverse talent and making Flown available to anyone that wants it, really anyone can get a boost in their focus and productivity as a result of working in this way. yeah, it should be encouraged.
Well, that's the thing. Neurodiversity is all of the approaches, isn't it? It's all of the different ways that people want to do things. So, yeah. Love it. Love it. So, Alicia, thank you so much for that. I really enjoyed that. And I hope that, some people are really listening and paying attention to I think some of the subtleties in there. For me, that's what makes this work. It's the stuff that you don't expect. So I'm sure that's going to be really successful. So one of the ways that we've shared and grown the community around the Change Show is from the referrals of people like yourself. Who would you like to pass the baton on? Who do you think is a real change maker that we should be talking to?
So this may sound self-serving, but it's a genuine and heartily made recommendation, and it's my sister. So Kat Navarro is very different from me, is extraordinary. So she comes from a change management background herself, and she started very early, in her 20s. She was working in Australia, doing massive change management projects for, New South Wales Police and for other statewide or countrywide utility companies, for example. And then she came to London and started working for startups and particularly helping with talent. So while we are very different personality-wise, we both have a very similar view on the importance of culture and how creating a great team culture and people systems is transformative to an organization. And so I've seen her go into companies again and again and again and completely transform them into high-performing companies with, really great culture. And she has a particular passion in mid-career managers, because all too often organizations hire young people that are with them for a long time, and they're the ones that are perhaps promoted into positions of leadership but have never really worked anywhere else, and so have never really learned some of the management skills that they might otherwise have. So she's really exceptional at helping people learn how to be great leaders. And she's got a really direct, style about her. So I really recommend her to people that are interested in change makers.
Excellent. I look forward to speaking to her. Thanks. Wonderful. Well, the last thing, nobody gets off this show without sharing a track for the Change Show playlist. So what's the track that's maybe been a companion throughout your career, or something that really stands out, a moment in time that you'd like to add to?
My last company, Skimlinks, I was a really big believer in traditions because they helped create the culture. So every Friday at 5 p.m., the Fleetwood Mac song Go Your Own Way would start to be played. And whenever those first few bars, which are very distinct, start, everyone felt their shoulders, go down, because it was like, right, we know the weekend is here. And so that became our company anthem. And the reason I chose it and love it is because it really is exactly about what you're talking about. It's about going your own way. Well, it's not necessarily about that, but it's actually about a relationship and so on. But the name of the song is a really nice slogan. Go your own way became just a real relevant motto for us. So I think it may be a very relevant song for your playlist now.
It will, definitely. And it's not on there yet, so it's a great addition. Wonderful. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights. And I wish you all the best with Flow, and I'm sure it's going to be massive. How can people get in touch? How can they find out more and all of that good stuff? Yeah,
we're at flown.com, FLOWN, flown.com. And you can try it out. We have a 30-day free trial, and people find it really addictive in a positive way. So they can try that, or they can find me on LinkedIn and follow me there.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you, Alicia. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. That was The Change Show with my very special guest, Alicia Navarro. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and I'll catch up with you again here soon. Take care.